This woman named Sierra destroyed the best relationship of her life, and she still doesn't understand why. She had a man who loved her deeply for 4 years, who proposed twice with his whole heart on the line, and each time she said no while secretly enjoying the power it gave her. She tested him, manipulated him, and kept other men around as backup plans. And when he finally walked away, she was shocked. When he found real love with someone else just months later, she was furious. But here's the devastating truth she refuses to accept. She didn't lose him because of bad timing or bad luck. She lost him because of who she chose to be. I'm Emma, and today on Mrs. Emma, I'm sharing a story that will make you question everything you think you know about relationships, control, and what it really means to love someone. This is Sierra's story, told in her own words, and I promise you, by the end of this, you'll see exactly how someone can have everything and throw it all away without even realizing it until it's far too late. Sierra is 29 years old, working an office job doing paperwork and scheduling. Nothing fancy, as she puts it. Her boyfriend Colton works in shipping and logistics. They've been together for 4 years, and according to everyone who knows them, they're the perfect couple. But behind closed doors, Sierra has been running a very different kind of relationship. From the beginning, Sierra saw Colton as steady, reliable, but in her mind, steady was just another word for boring. Sure, he was sweet and caring, but he had this habit of asking her opinion about everything. What did she want for dinner? Where should they go this weekend? What would make her happy? At first, she found it thoughtful, but over time, it started to irritate her. She wanted him to just take charge, to make decisions without constantly seeking her approval. But here's where things get complicated. While Sierra complained that Colton asked too many questions, she was the one who actually demanded constant reassurance throughout their relationship. She would ask him over and over if he was happy, if he saw a future with her, if he was truly committed. She needed to feel secure. She needed to know where she stood. But when Colton tried to ask her the same questions, when he tried to understand her feelings, she would get defensive and shut him down. Why does he need to know every detail of how I'm feeling, she would think. Can't he just trust that I'm here because I want to be? The double standard was staggering, but Sierra couldn't see it. Or maybe she didn't want to see it. Throughout their relationship, Sierra did something she called reality checks. These weren't innocent observations. They were calculated tests designed to see how Colton would react under pressure. She would create situations to see if he would choose her over his friends. She would watch carefully when other men talked to her, measuring his jealousy to gauge his commitment. She wanted proof that he would fight for her if things got difficult. And you know what? She admits this wasn't just about security. She actually enjoyed it. She would pull back emotionally just to watch him panic and come running back with more attention and more effort. It proved to her that he really cared, even though she knew it stressed him out. She kept mental notes of everything, too. Every time he didn't text back fast enough. Every time he made plans without checking with her first. She wasn't being crazy, she insists. She was being observant. There's a difference, she tells herself. When she brought up these concerns, Colton would sometimes tell her she was overthinking or being too sensitive. And this made her angry. She wasn't being sensitive. She was paying attention to patterns that mattered. But the reality is this. Sierra was building a relationship based on control, not trust. Based on tests, not faith. Based on keeping score, not growing together. By year 3, Colton started talking more seriously about their future. He mentioned marriage, discussed kids, and even showed her houses online that he thought she might like. Instead of feeling excited or loved, Sierra felt pressured. Why did everything have to be on his timeline? Why couldn't they just be happy with what they had? When he brought up engagement or weddings, she would change the subject or give vague responses. She wasn't ready. She needed more time. She needed to be absolutely certain this was what she wanted for her entire life. But while she was making Colton wait and prove himself over and over, Sierra started developing what she called professional friendships with other men, particularly one man named Jackson from her workplace, who had recently gotten divorced. Jackson was more financially successful than Colton. He had confidence that came from experience. They would grab coffee and talk about work. He would compliment her intelligence and ambition. He made her feel appreciated in ways she convinced herself Colton didn't. Sierra insists she never crossed any lines with Jackson. But she loved the attention. She loved the reminder that other men found her interesting and attractive. It kept things in perspective, she says. It reminded her of what she could have if she wanted it. So while Colton was planning a future with her, Sierra was keeping her options open. While he was trying to build something permanent, she was making sure she had an escape route. While he was being faithful and committed, she was enjoying the validation of another man's interest. The first proposal happened at the beach where they had their first date 3 years earlier. Colton had been acting nervous all week, and Sierra knew something was coming. When he got down on one knee that evening and pulled out a ring, her first thought wasn't about love or their future together. She was thinking about how basic it all seemed. The beach again? Couldn't he come up with something more creative? She'd seen proposal videos online that were way more impressive. When he asked her to marry him, she felt pressure and irritation. Here he was, putting her on the spot in a public place, expecting her to have an emotional breakdown of joy like in the movies. But that's not how she works, she tells herself. She needs time to process big decisions. So she said, "I want to marry you, but not right now." She chose those words carefully. She wanted to let him know she wasn't rejecting him as a person, just the timing. And she watched his face crumble with hurt and disappointment. And here's where Sierra reveals something truly disturbing. She admits that part of her felt bad about hurting him, but another part felt powerful. Seeing how much her answer affected him proved how important she was to him. It showed her that he really needed her, that she had control over his happiness. She knows how terrible that sounds, but she's being honest. In that moment, hurting him made her feel powerful. What Sierra didn't tell Colton were her real reasons for saying no. First, she wasn't completely convinced he was her best option. At 26, she felt like she still had time to see what else was out there. That guy Jackson at work seemed more ambitious and confident. She wanted to keep that door open, just in case. Second, she wanted Colton to prove himself more before she committed. She needed to see him work harder, make more money, show her he could provide the lifestyle she envisioned. The ring was nice, but not amazing. She wanted to see if he would step up his game if she made him wait longer. After the proposal, Sierra watched Colton struggle with disappointment and confusion, and she managed his emotions carefully. She gave him just enough affection and reassurance to keep him from walking away, but not so much that he felt completely secure. She wanted him to understand that her love wasn't guaranteed, that he needed to keep earning it. During the weeks that followed, she used his vulnerability to establish new expectations. Since he wanted to show her how serious he was, she started expecting more expensive dates, more thoughtful gestures, more attention to her needs. If he was going to prove his commitment, he needed to put in more effort across the board. She also ramped up her testing. She would be vague about her plans, not answer texts right away, mention other guys in casual conversation just to see how he would react. When he asked questions about her behavior, she would flip it around and accuse him of not trusting her. She made it clear that jealousy and possessiveness would push her away. Looking back, Sierra admits she enjoyed having this level of control. He was constantly trying to please her and win her approval, and it felt good. But she was also frustrated that he wasn't stepping up in all the ways she expected after the rejection. The year between the first and second proposal became what Sierra calls her testing phase. She pushed boundaries more systematically. She questioned his plans with friends. She made comments about how real partners prioritize their relationships above everything else. When he made plans without consulting her first, she would give him the silent treatment until he learned to ask for her input. She wasn't trying to be controlling, she insists. She just wanted him to consider her feelings before making decisions that affected their time together. But then something started to change. As they approached the 1-year mark since his first proposal, Colton began pulling back. He stopped asking her opinion about every little thing. He started making plans with his friends without checking with her first. At first, this annoyed Sierra, but then she thought maybe it was a good sign. Maybe he was finally developing some backbone. But it also made her nervous because she was used to having more influence over his decisions. So she gave him more attention and affection during this period. Not because she was feeling more loving, but because she wanted to make sure he wasn't losing interest. The second proposal happened at the Botanical Garden downtown. Colton had put way more effort into this one with help from their friends. There were roses, a fountain, an elaborate romantic setup. Sierra was impressed by the effort, but she was also annoyed. Now other people were invested in her answer. She felt pressured by all the theatrics. When he got down on one knee again, Sierra felt that familiar mix of power and irritation. And in that moment, standing there looking at him with the ring, she found herself thinking about Jackson. Jackson had recently mentioned his divorce was final and he was ready to start dating again. He'd made comments about how lucky Colton was to have her. Sierra couldn't help but wonder what it would be like to be with someone who truly appreciated her worth from the beginning. So when Colton asked her to marry him again, she said, "Not just yet." She chose those words specifically to keep him hoping while buying herself more time. She watched his face crumble, and she admits there was a part of her that enjoyed the drama of the moment. She liked seeing how much power she had over his emotions. It proved to her just how much control she had in the relationship. But this rejection hit Colton differently than the first one. Instead of just accepting her answer, he started asking direct questions. What was holding her back? When would she be ready? His tone was different too, less pleading and more demanding. Sierra felt cornered because she couldn't tell him the truth. That she was keeping her options open and waiting to see if something better came along. When she gave him another vague answer about needing to be sure, Colton got angry in a way she'd never seen before. He told her that after 4 years, if she wasn't sure by now, what would ever make her sure? He said he wasn't going to keep waiting, that he was done wasting his time. Sierra started to panic. Not because she couldn't imagine life without him, but because she was about to lose the comfortable dynamic where she held all the power. She liked having someone so devoted to her, someone who made her the center of his world. She wasn't ready to give that up. So she tried her usual tactics. The tears, the vulnerability, the emotional display that normally got him to back down and comfort her. But this time, he just stood there watching her cry without trying to fix it. She could see she was losing control of the situation, and that terrified her more than the idea of losing him. In desperation, she told him fine, she would marry him. Please don't go. But even as she said it, she knew it was coming from the wrong place. She wasn't saying yes because she wanted to marry him. She was saying it because she wanted to win the argument and maintain control. And Colton? He walked away anyway. Sierra was completely shocked. She'd never seen him stand firm like that before, and she didn't know how to handle a version of Colton who wouldn't bend to her will. After Colton left, Sierra wasn't devastated about losing the love of her life. She was furious about losing control of the situation. Her first instinct was to blame everyone else. Their friends should have talked sense into him. His family probably turned him against her. Other women must have been filling his head with ideas about what he deserved. She was shocked that he didn't come crawling back within a few days like he always did after their fights. Usually, he was the one who apologized first. She'd gotten used to him being the peacemaker. Days turned into a week, then 2 weeks, and still nothing. That's when Sierra started her campaign to control the narrative through their mutual friends. She told carefully edited versions of their story that made her look reasonable, and him look impatient and demanding. She emphasized how she just wanted to be absolutely sure about such a big decision, how she needed a partner who would respect her timeline and support her need for certainty. Most of their female friends were sympathetic. They understood her position. Sierra made sure to mention how hurt she was that he'd given her an ultimatum instead of being patient with someone he claimed to love. She painted herself as the victim of his unrealistic expectations and emotional manipulation. The attention and sympathy felt good. People were checking on her, bringing her food, validating her feelings. She felt like the wounded party, and she liked having that status. But she was getting frustrated that some people, especially his friends, weren't buying her version of events. They seemed to think he'd been more than patient, that she'd had plenty of time to figure out her feelings. Whatever, Sierra thought. They were clearly biased toward him. She became obsessed with monitoring what Colton was doing and who he was talking to. She stalked his social media constantly, looking for signs that he was missing her or regretting his decision. She asked mutual friends casual questions about him, trying to seem concerned rather than desperate for information. But the reports coming back were not what she wanted to hear. According to their friends, he seemed to be doing fine without her. He wasn't posting sad songs or moping around. Instead, he appeared to be focusing on himself, hanging out with friends, even seeming happier. This made Sierra absolutely furious. How dare he act like losing her was no big deal? How could he seem better off without her when she'd been the best thing in his life for 4 years? 6 months after Colton left, Sierra's world collapsed in the most painful way possible. She found out through social media that he wasn't just moving on, he was thriving without her. A woman named Hadley had started appearing in his posts. She was a nurse, and from what Sierra could see, she seemed annoyingly sweet and supportive. But what really killed Sierra wasn't just that he was with someone else. It was how completely different their relationship looked from theirs. In every photo, they both looked genuinely happy and relaxed. There was no drama, no testing, no games. Hadley never posted cryptic quotes about relationships or made passive-aggressive comments about needing space. They just seemed to enjoy each other's company without all the complexity Sierra thought was normal in serious relationships. Sierra spent hours analyzing their social media interactions, looking for signs of problems or incompatibility. But everything seemed disgustingly healthy. Then came the devastating blow. Through mutual friends, Sierra learned that Colton had proposed to Hadley after only 8 months together. And she had said yes immediately. 8 months. Sierra had 4 years to figure out her feelings, and this woman knew after less than a year that she wanted to marry him. The engagement announcement was everywhere on social media, with everyone commenting about how perfect they were together, and how Hadley clearly knew a good man when she saw one. That last comment felt like a personal attack, like they were saying Sierra had been too stupid to recognize what she had. When Sierra tried to make subtle negative comments about how rushed their engagement was, people started pointing out that she'd had plenty of time to appreciate Colton and chose not to. Her own friends began distancing themselves from her as they realized she was being bitter instead of supportive. But the absolute worst part was learning that Colton had gotten promoted at work and was buying a house with Hadley. Everything Sierra had wanted him to prove to her, all the financial stability and ambition she'd demanded, he was now providing for someone else who'd never asked him to prove anything. Hadley never made him jump through hoops or earn her love through grand gestures. She simply loved him and built a life with him, which apparently was all he'd ever wanted. Sierra discovered that while she'd been testing his devotion and making him work for her approval, Hadley had been his partner and supporter. While she'd been keeping her options open and maintaining other friendships with men like Jackson, Hadley had been building a future with him. While she'd been analyzing every flaw and pushing him to be better, Hadley had been accepting him as he was and growing with him. It made Sierra sick to realize that everything she thought made her a smart, careful woman actually made her look like someone who didn't know what she had. In desperation, Sierra made one final attempt to reclaim some control over the situation. She sent Colton a long message explaining how she was ready now, how she'd realized what she'd lost, and how they could work things out if he was willing to try again. She told him that what they had was real and deep in ways his new relationship couldn't match, that Hadley would never understand him like she did. His response was brief and absolutely crushing. He told her he was happy with his life and wished her well, but he wasn't interested in looking backward. He said he hoped she would find what she was looking for, but it wouldn't be with him. The message was polite, but final. Sierra could tell she no longer had any power over him whatsoever. She had become completely irrelevant to his happiness and success. And even now, sitting in her apartment, scrolling through photos of their engagement party, consumed with rage and jealousy, Sierra still refuses to admit that any of this is her fault. She's convinced that Colton was just impatient and couldn't handle being with a woman who had standards. Hadley obviously settled for the first decent guy who came along, which says more about her desperation than his worth. Their friends chose sides based on superficial things instead of understanding the real dynamics of the relationship. Society pressures women to settle down instead of taking time to make smart decisions about their futures. Everyone failed her in this situation, Sierra believes. But she's the one who has to live with the consequences of their shortcomings. She even tells herself she dodged a bullet, because if Colton couldn't wait for her to be ready, he obviously wasn't the right person for her in the first place. Sierra's story is a painful reminder of what happens when we treat relationships like games we can win and people like possessions we can control. She had a man who loved her genuinely, who wanted to build a life with her, who was willing to wait and work and prove himself over and over. But it was never enough because her goal wasn't actually to build a partnership. Her goal was to maintain power. She tested him when she should have trusted him. She kept him uncertain when she should have made him secure. She looked for better options when she should have appreciated what she had, and she enjoyed watching him struggle to win her approval instead of being the partner he deserved. The saddest part isn't that she lost him. The saddest part is that even now, she can't see her own role in the destruction of their relationship. She can't see that the control she thought made her powerful actually made her toxic. She can't see that the standards she thought protected her actually prevented her from experiencing real love. Hadley didn't steal Colton away. Ciara pushed him away, slowly and deliberately, with every test and every game and every moment she chose power over partnership. Hadley just recognized what Ciara couldn't see, that a good man who loves you genuinely is worth saying yes to, not worth playing games with. If this story resonated with you, if it made you think differently about relationships and what really matters, please hit that like button. Share this video with someone who needs to hear Ciara's cautionary tale, and subscribe to Mrs. Emma's channel so you never miss stories that challenge us, teach us, and remind us of the kind of people we want to be in our relationships. Because at the end of the day, love isn't about control. It's about trust. It's not about tests. It's about faith. And it's not about keeping your options open. It's about choosing someone and building something real together. Thank you for listening. I'm Emma, and I'll see you in the next story.